What's going on YouTube? Today's video is going to be a continuation of my HK417 build series. So as you can see in front of you, this rifle is very close to complete. In fact, there's only one part missing from this rifle, and that is the factory HK 2-position adjustable gas block. And as I'll explain a little bit later in the video, that's going to be necessary if I want to run this rifle both suppressed and unsuppressed. As far as where I'm at on updates with this rifle since the last video, I do have all of my accessories for it finally, including a scope, the bipod, suppressor obviously, which I covered in the last video, and I have somewhat tuned the gas system to allow me to, in the meantime, run this without the adjustable gas block, but only suppressed. The gun as it sits right now will not run unsuppressed, it's actually undergassed, and I'll explain that here in just a bit. But starting off, we do have an optic for this gun now. This is a Leupold Mark 6, 3 to 18 by 44. The military has a few different names for this optic. The Dagger, the ECOS-O, or the SU-297 or 279, I believe. So they have a few different designations for it, but this is a common modern military optic used on everything from 417s to SCARs to M110s, even some M4A1s have been seen with these optics mounted to them. So I am a fan of these optics as far as the size and the weight goes in comparison to the power that you're getting, the magnification range. They're pretty impressive. They have had some issues in the past with the turrets tracking properly and some issues with the old clutch lock turrets, but these optics in their modern form are pretty good. I would say the Mark V series is better in general, but if you're like me and you're looking for a clone optic, these are not bad by any stretch. So the mount that we have it in is a LaRue OBR. It's a 34mm mount, obviously. And we also have a scope level from Accuracy First. So the 417 Assaulter, seen in use by DevGru, these have been on a lot of these rifles. In fact, these have been used on a lot of military rifles in general, from Mark 13s to SR25s and anything else where you want to know that your rifle is level prior to firing a shot. These are kind of cool in the sense that they don't actually use an air bubble like a lot of levels do. They have a little ceramic ball in there that, according to Accuracy First, is more sensitive to movement, and it just gives you a more precise basis for how level your rifle is. So this scope should look familiar. I've gone over its basic features in a previous video, which I'll link down in the description. In fact, this is the exact same scope that was on my Mark 17 DMR project rifle. The individual I sold it to when I parted out that rifle was actually kind enough to sell it back to me. So shout out to you, you know who you are. Moving on to the bipod. This is an Atlas B10 bipod, which has been seen in common use on a lot of military rifles. I honestly don't like these as much as the standard Harris bipods. I think the Harris is a better bipod and is certainly a lot quicker to deploy. You don't have any buttons like you do on the Atlas in order to deploy it. But this is what was used on the rifle that I'm cloning, so that's what I've gone with. You'll notice it has an American Defense QD mount built into it. If you go and buy one of these off the shelf today, it'll come with an updated version of this QD lever. I have actually gone through the trouble of tracking down the old QD lever and mounting it to a current production bipod, just to keep with the clone aspect of things. So not too much to talk about there. CQD sling mount, and then finally I'll talk about the gas block. So as many of you know, if you follow me on Instagram, I have been looking high and low for an HK adjustable gas block, but in the meantime, until I find one, I wanted to make the factory gas block work. So I'm going to try not to get too technical here, but in short, when you chop down one of these barrels, or any gun barrel, you typically have to open up the gas port in the barrel to allow more gas to flow into the gas system in order for it to cycle properly. And this often leads to a sharper recoil impulse, and there's some downsides to it. But with a shorter barrel that has less dwell time, or in other words, less space between the gas port and the muzzle, you need a larger gas port for the gun to function. Now, one way to counter this is with a suppressor. So for those of you out there thinking about taking on this project, but you don't want to track down that 2-position adjustable gas block, my recommendation would be to leave the factory gas port size, which is 1.5 millimeters, and then mount your suppressor of choice to it. And as long as it's not a flow-through can, which doesn't really add any back pressure to the system, it should run just fine. In fact, the folks at Sigwo Arms in Springfield, Missouri have tested that, and they found that the gun is pretty beautifully gassed with the factory gas port size and one of these B&T Rotex 3 suppressors. So with the understanding that you're only going to run this gun with the suppressor and it's not going to be reliable or may not even function at all without the suppressor, that is an option. Now, in my case, I am trying to track down the adjustable gas block, which will let me flip between essentially 2 gas port sizes. So that's why I have opted to drill out my gas port to 2 millimeters. So meaning that the gun now, or when I first drilled out the gas port, ran great with no suppressor. But when I added the suppressor, it was then very overgassed. And so in order to make this gas block work, I've actually drilled out the gas vent on the front of the gas block. This is just a little pinhole that bleeds off excess gas from the system. It's sort of self-regulating, if you want to think about it like that. Any excess gas that's in there is just going to spew out the front rather than actually impinging on the gas piston system. But now I'm back at point A, where I've opened up this gas port enough. I think it's 1.8 millimeters is the size that I settled on. That without the suppressor, the gun is now undergassed and does not run reliably. So, long story short, until I get the 2-position adjustable gas block, I am also locked into only using this gun suppressed, which is fine. I can live with that in the meantime. There's no telling how long it'll be till I can find that gas block. But in the meantime, this gun is very pleasant to shoot for a 12-inch 308 thanks to this B&T can. So, the final part of this video, I'll talk about the accuracy of the platform. Now, I haven't put a ton of rounds through this yet. I just took it out for its first actual range session where I zeroed it and kind of got a feel for what the rifle could do. I tried out 2 different kinds of ammo. I tried Magtech M80 ball, which has a pretty horrid reputation for accuracy and reliability, but that's what I had on hand. I also tried Federal Gold Medal Match 175 grain, which has a stellar reputation for accuracy. Though in this rifle, the 175 grain, I believe, is a little bit too heavy for this rifle. So in the future, I will be testing out a wider variety of loads, in particular loads that are made for a short 308 barrel. There are a few out there that I will tell you guys about in the future. But for now, just quick disclaimer, these groups were not my best work. They certainly show that the rifle has potential, but don't think of this as the pinnacle of accuracy for this platform. These were pretty mediocre groups, but I'll go ahead and clip in a couple photos of what I got. The first group is the Magtech M80. And again, don't pay attention to the fact that these aren't zeroed, perfectly on the bullseye. I wasn't going for a perfect zeroing session. I just wanted to get them on paper, see how they grouped, and potentially start to figure out what kind of ammo I want to run in this gun. But the Magtech M80 ball had pretty horrific groupings, which I expected. Excluding the flyer that's way off to the right, it's probably about a 2 to 2.5 or 3 MOA gun. With that flyer, it's like 6 or 7 MOA. Which, again, between the reputation of Magtech ammo and the fact that it's just M80 ball, it's nothing special, I wasn't expecting very good accuracy out of that at all. The Federal Gold Medal Match did do much, much better. It definitely preferred that ammo over the Magtech, but it's still not quite what I know this rifle is capable of. I believe that group was around 1.5 inches, which, if you're just going to use this as a battle rifle, is pretty good. Again, something that you're running with a precision optic that's, 18 power magnification, shooting off of a bipod with a cheater bag. it shouldn't be a problem for this rifle to get under sub MOA. But that's just my experience shooting the rifle today with a very limited selection of ammo. But I think I've showed that it does have potential, and that chopping it down to 12 inches didn't ruin the accuracy or anything like that. So I'll clip in a couple videos here of me actually firing the gun. You can notice how the gassiness of the system has been tamed down a lot due to my work with the gas vent. So here we've obviously moved to a different angle of the gun just so you can get it all in its entirety. So my final thoughts on this platform, it takes a lot of work to get a commercial MR762 to this point, but as with most of my builds, I feel like it is worth it whenever you get the completed product, because you end up with something that you are intimately familiar with. You're familiar with every little detail of the gun, and when you get something that actually works and is somewhat practical, which I use that word very loosely, it's pretty satisfying just to see it all come together. This gun gets attention every time I take it to the range. It gets a lot of attention on social media just because you don't really see the 417 in its assaulter form very often. And to actually have all of the clone correct components and hopefully someday have the 2-position adjustable gas block for it, which is, in my opinion, one of the hardest clone parts in existence to track down. I'm very excited for this project. I'm excited to have it at a point where it's able to be shot, where I can see what it can do, and I might even take it to some competitions or some classes at some point. So if I do that, I will post about it on my Instagram. You can follow me there at inferior_rifles. If you have any questions about this, drop them down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me out here on the channel and helps me out with YouTube's algorithm. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.